Welcome to our Natural Habitat Adventures webinar today, Discover China's Natural Splendors, presented to you by Brad Josephs. Brad has been a professional naturalist guide, wildlife photographer, and wildlife expedition leader since he graduated from the University of Alaska Fairbanks with a BS in wildlife biology in 1999. And he's been with us at NatHab since 2004. He has guided numerous professional photographers, photography workshops, bear viewers, and film crews on expeditions to view coastal brown bears along the remote coast of the Katmai National Park in Alaska. Brad also leads expeditions in China and Borneo that focus on keystone species that offer endless flora and fauna photography opportunities. And for 15 years, he has guided polar bear and aurora borealis expeditions in northern Canada. Most recently, Brad has focused his efforts on his lifelong fantasy of guiding and helping wildlife conservation efforts in Asia. And when not traveling for work, Brad keeps busy as a freelance wildlife writer, photographer, and videographer, and consultant for wildlife film projects and lectures to schools, government agencies, and organizations on natural history and bear biology and safety. Brad's hobbies include botany, gardening, bird watching, fly fishing, and canoeing in the Ozarks of Arkansas, where he recently moved from Alaska. He's a former EMT with the Homer, Alaska Fire Department and possesses a current wilderness first responder certification. You can check out Brad's blog site, which is alaskabearsandwolves.com, to see his wildlife articles, images, and videos. And you can follow him on Instagram at Brad Josephs Photos. And we're going to see a lot of those photos and videos today. So we thank you all for being with us. And Brad, turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Leith. I really appreciate that. It's always a great introduction. Well, I've been normally I'm very nervous about these webinars because I'm speaking to a crowd and I can't see their facial expressions and stuff. But right now I'm just excited because I actually requested to do this webinar on China because I'm so excited about this trip. And if somebody many times asked me, Brad, you got all these trips all over the place. If you had just one place to guide, where would it be? And honestly, it's China. It's the trip that I get most excited about for a number of reasons, as well I'll explain. And I think that kind of to summarize why I get so excited about it. And it's a fun place to be. The food is amazing. The scenery is incredible. I think that it's really enriching for me to take people and show them something that surprises them so much, which is China. I think that China, especially the region we go, is, the rest of the world has a certain stereotype of China. And well, this trip, and a lot of those stereotypes are negative. And what this trip does is it just breaks them down. And people are just really enjoy this exotic culture and the wonderful people. And so I love the unique wildlife, the stuff that people never get to see, never heard of, stuff that they never thought they'd ever see in the wild. I love the fact that Natural Habitat this is a trip that I've been personally working on since 2008, and and so I'm very proud of it in a lot of ways, and watching it develop, and I think it really epitomizes a couple things what Natural Habitat specializes in is using ecotourism for conservation, and using us traveling there to help the resources. And in my opinion, this is, well, to my knowledge, the best example of a trip that does that in the world to a place that needs it the most. So it's the best conservation contribution to conservation that even a company that basically is famous for that does. And it's just sort of is a great example of what NatHab's also famous for, which is pioneering off the beaten track, unique destinations, not cookie cutter trips. I mean, we make our own trips, we design it ourselves, and nobody else does it like it. So it's a uniqueness that I think is very, very special. So yeah, this trip is it surprises everybody that comes on it. So. And webinars are great. The best way to sort of describe a trip, especially since it's being described by the person who guides the trip. But even this this isn't gonna even come close to like really doing it justice of what it's really like to be there. So I'll get started. Quick, yeah, she already introduced me. So I mean, yeah, I started out as a wildlife biology in University of Alaska Fairbanks. Lived up there for 20 years. Started out doing government biology, sort of field research on small mammals and then bears, and then switched over to guiding. And the natural habitat is what took something that was mostly seasonal work into a year-round career and kind of helped me fulfill my fantasy of doing exactly what I wanted to do for a living since I was basically 3 years old and could make that decision. So guiding, I guess, Alaska for the brown bears. That's where I started guiding and still do that and love it to death. Nothing quite like it. And the polar bear trips, did that for many years. Also, Aurora Borealis trips in Churchill, and I just finished my season there when was it? In February. Incredible photography, and then in Borneo has been very exciting. That's my most recent destination that I started, and love Borneo. The diversity, just the plants, the animals, the culture, the people, everything's fantastic. But you'll notice everything has a sort of a keystone species, and that would be an animal that's very charismatic and grabs your attention. And so probably 95% of the people that are watching this want to see because they're interested in pandas. And people that come to Borneo, they're interested in orangutans. And that they're certainly there, and that's what we see. But what I really enjoy doing is showing them the rest of the ecosystem and stuff that they've never heard of. And so kind of as a conservation rule, a keystone species, such as in China would be the panda, is the same thing that World Wildlife Fund would characterize as let's save the panda because people are drawn to pandas. But then you end up conserving that animal because people like it, and then everything else, the local culture, the fauna, all the other animals, and then the flora, and just stuff as like a giant ecosystem wide range. And so that's the exciting part is you just dangle the panda out there and we deliver the panda. The pandas speak for themselves, but then there's all this other amazing stuff that people weren't expecting. And China's the great example of that. So China, well, the pandas really is the main focus of the trip. And pandas are, ironically, maybe, and many people would agree, the most charismatic animal on Earth. The people they just find it so cute and so charming, and so just everything about it is just wow. Look at the panda, but it's also an animal that very, very nearly went extinct, and as recently as the 1980s. So, but they're not like that anymore. And they're still, they're still of conservation concern, absolutely. But they've making a huge comeback. And I think so, and even though China often gets stereotyped and criticized for being a destroyer of natural resources, ironically, they are the owners of what I say is the greatest conservation story on Earth. And an example to other countries and places and species is that pandas are very difficult to learn about, study, conserve. They almost went extinct, and there's never really been a conservation effort in the history of humans and on Earth as strong and impressive as the panda conservation story. So that really is the theme, is to set aside the stereotypes of China and let's focus on the beautiful good things. Because I've had people tell me, oh, I'd like to see that area of China, and I love pandas, but I'm not going to support China because they do A, B, and C that's bad. Well, those things are true, but there's also E, F, and G that China does that's really, really good, and the people that are doing that and those efforts are very much worth and deserve attention and recognition and appreciation and support. And you can't do that any other way better than actually going and seeing it yourself and having a big smile on your face and saying, thank you. I'm so glad that these animals in these areas are conserved. That's awesome. So China's had a 17% increase in their population just since 2002. So, and the panda reserves has increased a tremendous amount. Now it's at 67. So this is an enormous increase recently compared to anything that we've done in the United States. So it's very impressive. So you can tell that the Chinese, they love pandas. It's more than just an animal they like. It's part of their culture. It's part of their identity, and it's a national obsession that some of us like to call pandemonium. So if you like pandas, you like animals, you like animal lovers, it's a very impressive thing to see this obsession and love of pandas. And you're like, wow, this isn't really the China that I thought. These guys are really, they're more in love with this animal than any North America is with any North American animal. So, and because the World Wildlife Fund is partnered with Natural Habitat, and so we are ecotourism conservation specialists, and WWF is a conservation organization, so they have a travel program that we are in charge of because we do it the best. And well, you know that the panda is the symbol of WWF for a number of reasons. It started in the 60s, but not only are they the icon of WWF, but as I'll explain later, they actually is the organization that saved the giant panda from extinction with the help of the Chinese government. So in 2013, when WWF and NatHab came together as an exclusive partner, so WWF doesn't work with any other companies as a travel program anymore like they used to. It's just exclusive. That partnership became strong. We support WWF a tremendous amount monetarily, and then they support us in a number of ways, a lot of education, and being able to help us tie in the conservation theme of our trips. Well, when that partnership solidified and strengthened, I actually was in China helping to redesign this specific trip. And so NatHab called me up and said, or emailed me and said, hey, Brad, you're in Chengdu. Can you just make sure that you get lots and lots of panda pictures? Because we really want one for the cover to symbolize this awesome partnership. And I said, sure. So I took some pictures, and this one was the one that got picked for the cover back in those days. So it's just kind of symbolic. This is the most symbolic, iconic trip for the NatHab WWF partnership. So WWF, basically, with the Saving the Giant Panda, they were invited by the Chinese government. And this is a long story. I mean, I could have an hour-and-a-half presentation on this whole story, so I got to keep it very short, a lot to cover. But just so you know that this is that WWF is helping right now with things like habitat of pandas, helping to acquire habitat, helping the Chinese government acquire habitat. They've got their own Chinese chapter that's very, very big and strong and influential in the government. Taking habitat that exists with pandas and creating corridors, so you have gene flow, it's basic conservation biology. Also helping manage and support things like patrolling, managing the reserves, and then doing research. So it's tons of stuff is going on, and panda being one of the focus species in China for WWF. But as one of the things that I like to do to help people appreciate World Wildlife Fund is show the people that are on the trip like actually what's really being done, not just tell about what happened in a meeting somewhere in DC or Beijing. Well, we can go out in the countryside and see the coolest thing that WWF started. And basically, they help design and implement these methane tanks under local farmers' houses. And so that all they do, they say, look, they help set it up and they design it, everything, and support the installation. You have a big tank under your small family farm, one family farm with crops and some animals near a panda habitat. We put all that bio waste into this methane tank, and you get two things: this kind of a compost tea that helps fertilize their crops, so that people like that a lot, and they get cooking gas out of it, so it keeps them from needing to go up in the forest and cut wood. So it's it's a win-win for everybody. So I just think it's the coolest idea, the coolest thing, and it's like, look, this is really what they're doing. And also, not only are we seeing what they're doing, but we're actually doing what they want and what we want to do, which is help with, because one of the mandates or goals for panda conservation, and really conservation all over the world, is to develop responsible ecotourism, to put a value on those habitats so that the villagers and the local governments don't lose out when they conserve. So it's easy for us in North America, after we've destroyed the Great Plains and done all that stuff, to to point our fingers and say, hey, stop cutting down those jungles in Borneo or the Amazon, because we want those animals around. Well, it's easier said than done, because we're not the ones that are starving, or we're not the developing country with disease problems and everything else of a developing country. So, but if we can show them, hey, if you keep these parks and these animals are there, and then the foreigners will come, and you guys will get better jobs, and you won't worry so much about not being able to go in and harvest and do things that harm the habitat. Well, that's putting a direct value on the resources. And I think in developing places in Asia, Africa, and Latin America especially, that's vital for conservation. So as you're traveling on this trip, it's the best conservation contribution you can do. It's better than writing a check or anything. You're going on a trip that's fun and interesting and cool, but you're also, you're really doing it. You're really helping. You're showing the support. You're meeting the people. They're seeing you, and you're influencing things. So as these programs continue to grow, the conservation value grows. So that's what I love about it. Okay, so now China, a little bit. I just want to throw this out there. So people a lot of times don't realize how vast China is. I mean, it's bigger than the lower 48. And it's enormous. It's a huge, vast place. Just like Florida is very different from Montana and Maine, and then the deserts of the Southwest and our Great Plains. China is also a giant, diverse place. It could take you your entire life to explore. But we are basically focused, and I've been all over China, guided different kinds of trips in China, traveled around on my own, and there's certainly the region that I love the most, which is where we focus our trips. We don't do a bunch of flying around the country to see all these extremely iconic cultural things, because we're natural habitat and we do natural history trips. So we focus on where we're going to have the best natural history, and that's kind of in the sort of the middle, and then in the Southwest, in the Sichuan province. You see Chengdu in the middle there. So Sichuan province, I think, is my favorite part of China for many reasons. And I think it's one of the best kept secrets of the world, because everything from the lifestyle, the culture, the history, the wildlife, the scenery, the food, I'll say the food several times now. It's just like, it's an incredible place, and it will go off the charts. It will become the next Sri Lanka or whatever as the hot place to go. Well, it isn't there yet, really. Especially the rural areas that we go to. So yeah, it's definitely one of those things where it's always going to be an amazing place to go, but it's always better, like when Myanmar first opened up, like it's better to go there before people have discovered it. So yeah, Sichuan, you see, is actually incredibly mountainous, and the mountains of Sichuan make our Rocky Mountains look like the Ozarks. I mean, it is basically like the Himalayas. I mean, it's connected to the same range of the Himalayas. It's not called the Himalayas in China. They're called different mountains, but it's the same thing, the same monster mountain peaks that commonly rise above 20,000 feet. And a lot of it's up in the remote northwest corners of Sichuan, the Tibetan Plateau region. But we start our trips there in the middle in Chengdu. Okay, so I just wanted to just introduce a couple people before I continue on with the itinerary. And so I'm one of the expedition leaders for China, but there's lots of trips, and we've got several others, including my very, very good friend Eddie Savage, who's similar to me, guides different places, naturalist, loves bears, photographer, and we've worked in China together a lot. He's got a special interest like me in China, and so we work together as a team. So maybe Eddie. We're all similar skills. We run the trips NatHab style. We take care of our folks, and we impart a lot of natural history knowledge and education into the trip. This is Moira. She's also Canadian, like Eddie, but guides many different places, and is also a bear specialist. And so definitely easy for us to get people excited about panda biology, everything else really natural history wise, and also make sure our folks are safe, healthy, and happy, which is what NatHab guides do. But being such a strange place, different than, not strange, just very, very different from Canada or United States, where most of our clients come from and where we're from. We have an incredible team, which really when you travel in China or do business in China, there is one key: is you need to find the right people to work with. And when I first started guiding in China, a quick backstory was in 2008, and this guy Philip, to me now he's like my brother. He's one of my treasured people I've ever met in my life, and I love him. And he was my national guide in China, and he wasn't really a natural history trip then. It was mostly cultural. And but he knew that I was a naturalist, and he wanted to become a naturalist and was beginning, to learn the birds and to learn things. And he had a dream of becoming what he would become, which is really the first, in my opinion, or what I could see, like the first very, very good guide for foreigners who's also an expert naturalist, a wildlife photographer, expert birder, and with a true passion and love of natural history. So when I first started guiding in China very recently in 2008, that those did not exist. You had your tourist guides, and then you had your biologists and stuff who didn't speak English or deal with tourists. Well, that is what I think is really grown with our program, is we are becoming the first natural history team in China, naturalist guides. And so we've got Philip as one of our, we call it national guides. Bella is one that I work with mostly now, and she is incredible. Everybody loves her to death, and just her personality, her storytelling, her knowledge, her efficiency, being able to get things done, an incredible birder. She knows every bird by song and sight. She's a fantastic wildlife spotter and got this just obsessed passion like we all do at NatHab with animals. So she's a fantastic partner to work with, like Philip. But there's so much. China's so complicated, and it's not set up for foreign tourists. And that's the cool thing about what we do, is we're going to places that aren't set up like with just for tourism. We're going to places that foreigners don't go. And so the logistics are difficult. So we always have an assistant with us, and it could be a number of assistants, but they do a ton of the background work and all the planning ahead and the phone calls, and there's just so much work involved in us doing a 12-day trip with a group through China. Just in China's a land of wild cards. Things pop up. It's a complicated, mysterious place, everything. But we have this incredible team of assistants, such as Corey up at the top left, who's a botany expert. So he knows every flower in China, at least in this region in China. Like, he knows every orchid by name. So he's a naturalist helping us, and he's just enjoying being with us and learning from us. And we've got Kevin, who's ridden his bike from Chengdu all the way to Lhasa. He's a mountain climber, and also a love of animals and photography and learning, but just making sure that these guys are so competent. Nothing slips past. We have perfect trips, even though we're in the boondocks of China, because these guys are so competent, work so hard, and they love what they're doing. And they're learning to be naturalist guides. And then Karen, down at the bottom, same thing. To watch when I was with Karen and see when we spotted a moon bear and she was looking through a scope at her first wild moon bear, she got so excited, started crying. It was pretty awesome. So to help foster a career as in the natural history guiding industry for these young guys and this young generation, and start something that didn't exist 10 years ago, to me is something I'm as proud of as anything in my life. And it's proud of Natural Habitat, what they've done. So those are the people, and I just love the people in China. And I think that's the really amazing sort of aspect that you're not expecting. Okay, you might look at my pictures and say, I'm expecting it to be beautiful. I'm expecting the animals to be cool, and the pandas are going to be as you think they are. But you might not expect China to be coming into such a golden age where people are so friendly, comfortable, still so different and exotic from us, but just having an amazing time because they're coming into their golden age. Because very recently, and I love to look into the foreigners' eyes and faces as they light up when they see us in these places where foreigners don't go, is that very recently they went through some very dark times. I won't get into it now, but they've fixed those problems. And of course, they're still growing and evolving. But the people in China are, especially compared to what it was like in the 60s, 70s, 80s, even 90s. And you look at someone like this old timer in this mountain village, looking at our group as we're enjoying China, and he's never seen foreigners before. And he's like, wow, these guys are, from Australia, England, and a lot somewhere in America. Wow. And it's just amazing to see these guys and just watching their country flourish and blossom, and everybody's happy, healthy, and well fed, and then you've got Americans. And I will say that Americans and British and stuff, they have a special place in these old timers' hearts, because especially in the southwest region in China during World War II, they were getting demolished by the Japanese. And American forces snuck in, called the Flying Tigers, and saved this area. They took out the Japanese Air Force. And these guys will never forget that. And it's just like there's a love and admiration and respect that it just feels really good to connect with these people. And to see this culture. And sometimes you feel like you're back in time. There's so many ethnic diversities. It's not just Han Chinese. You're in the area where both Silk Roads meet and stuff. And so you've got some Tibetan, you've got some Arab influence with some Muslim cultures. So, you're really kind of getting into sort of that Central Asian mixture of cultures that go through history of the Silk Road, and just beautiful people with different cultures, different food, and the minorities. So it's really interesting. Now, what we do is we start our trip in what is one of the world's greatest cities. And that's not just for me. I mean, I love it. But it's Chengdu. I could talk about Chengdu for an hour. It's an amazing city, really, to see. And this is our hotel, is the Shangri-La, right here on the right. And just across from that is this special bridge, and then the Jin River, or Jinjiang, which is also known as the Brocade River. And it's known as the Brocade River because, well, I'm trying to get that. Okay, Chengdu is famous as being the party city. It's got one of the highest rated quality of life in China. So it's famous through China for having this laid back lifestyle, tea, partying, restaurants. People are friendly, laid back. And then amazing history. So this Jin River that's right next to our hotel, and this bridge. Well, the Jin River is what basically is also the Brocade River, because Chengdu kind of was at the start of what's known as the Southern Silk Road, which went down as a trail, sort of a trading route that went down past Burma or through the mountains of Myanmar, and then down to the ocean from there. So a lot of silk was coming out of there, because the Sichuan Basin was a great place for the silkworms and the mulberry trees to be grown, which fed the silkworms. And then the waters of the Jin River were supposed to help make this brocade, or silk that is embroidered, the quality of it, see that much like the highest quality. So that's a strong part of the history. It's also famous, like UNESCO actually named in 2010 Chengdu the gastronomy, one of the two gastronomic cities. So everybody's heard of Sichuan cuisine. Well, this is where it started. And food is a culture, and it's an art form, and it's an ancient art form. And you cannot go to a restaurant, in my opinion, anywhere in the United States or Canada, and actually really see what Sichuan food is like, because the techniques may be the same, but you can't get the ingredients as fresh as you can. There's stuff that we've never heard of that they use in their cooking, and there's thousands and thousands and thousands of dishes. In fact, we'll have 25 dishes, and we all share them, kind of like family style, every night. And you'll look back and say, I don't even think we had the same dish twice. And so just the amount, and of course, it's very famous for its hot pot. And that goes back to deal with kind of the river traders being able to use oil and cook lots of different ingredients in a cheap, fast way, with using spices to make it taste good, and then to kind of warm them up because they were dealing in the water in the rivers. Now, of course, everybody's afraid, well, how spicy is this food? Yeah, if you like spicy food like me, you're gonna get some stuff you really like. But we're very, very careful. We're not gonna drag you guys on a trip and then you're forced to eat spicy food. We know that I'd say maybe 15% of our clients like spicy food. And So we make sure we've been doing this a long time, make sure that the people that don't like spicy food don't get it. So don't be afraid of that. The other reason why the Sichuan cuisine is so famous is because the Sichuan Basin, the country surrounding it's known as the land of heaven, the country of heaven, because it's so fertile. This river plain, great soil coming out of these huge mountains, and you get 200 species of mushrooms that are commonly eaten that you can buy at markets, vegetables and greens. People say like, "Oh, Brad, what's that?" Well, it's got a Chinese name, but there's nothing. These things don't exist where we are. There's just the food culture there, and the climate's unique enough that's, you have 2 to 5,000 years of civilization. I mean, it's very complex. The other thing that Chengdu is famous for is actually known as the hibiscus city. And I couldn't find a picture of a hibiscus flower, but you guys know what they look like. But the flowers in China are unbelievable. They are the master gardeners, especially in Sichuan. So we do things like go to a bamboo park in the city, where the elderly people go and they dance and they sing, and you really feel why Chengdu got this great reputation, this laid back atmosphere. And the tree of Chengdu is the ginkgo tree. And I love ginkgos. Ginkgos are beautiful in the fall and in the summertime. And Chengdu is full of ginkgos. So it's got gorgeous fall colors when we go in October, depending on your elevation and if you go late or early in the fall with us. But you're going to see some awesome fall colors of the ginkgo trees. So that's when we go. We either go for the fall colors in October and early November, or we go in the spring. Now, people will say, well, which is a better time? Well, equal. It just depends. Do you like it? Sichuan reminds me very much of North Carolina, where I grew up, like the Appalachians, and then in the basin would be like the Piedmont. So what would you like to go? Do you enjoy going to the mountains of eastern North Carolina in the spring and seeing the azaleas and rhododendrons, which dominate Sichuan province blooming, or do you like going in the fall when there's spectacular fall color? So that's up to you, what your preference. But the weather's great both periods, and then the wildlife and everything else we see is the same. So that answers that question of when's the best time to go. You got to pick. What do you like better, flowers or fall colors? I like them both equally. But pandas. So Chengdu is very famous for its pandas. It's the panda city. Chengdu is famous for many things. Very, very famous for pandas. And so our first day, we drive out and see our first panda base. Now, these aren't pandas in the wild, but they're in beautiful natural enclosures, and there's tons of them. So if you love pandas and you went like I was in 2000, and when I was 8 years old, and my dad took me to Washington, D.C. to see pandas, and I was very disappointed because we went back, we spent like a total of 6 hours there waiting, and the panda never got up from the bush, and there's only one. Well, pandas sleep a lot. Well, if you go on our trip, you're going to see so many pandas, you'll lose count. And yeah, there's going to be some sleeping, but when you're dealing with this many pandas, you're going to see lots of them interacting in these not zoo-like environment. I mean, they're enclosures, because these are breeding centers. This is where each breeding center specializes in a certain thing of panda conservation. The first one we go to is basically the Dujiayan Panda Base, which has 33, and it's actually where Taishan is now, the very famous panda that was born in Washington, D.C. Now, Taishan, well, when a panda goes into another country and comes back, it has to be quarantined. So this is and to make sure it didn't bring any diseases back to the rest of the pandas in China. So it's a place that specializes in veterinary research and panda medicine. So that it's not a zoo, it's a research base. We just go and we just enjoy seeing it. So you get to see lots of cool pandas, panda cubs climbing in trees. For photo opportunities, this is the place to get pictures that make people melt it's not just one cub you're going to see. You'll see 100 cubs on the trip, and they'll be playing together, and they're very happy. And it's just like they enjoy being in China. So that's just our first day to kind of take the pressure off. Like, you guys wanted a panda fix, we're going to give that to you. But we are at NatHab, we always make it special, so what we do is a volunteer program where we actually go behind the scenes. We can help clean up the poo from the enclosures and feed the pandas, provide food for them, and really learn behind the scenes how to take care of these pandas, including being able to feed them, which is an amazing experience. And usually a lot of people start crying. Now, I don't want you to say, well, why is a panda in a cage? Well, this is a panda house. Sometimes it's too hot and they want to go inside their house. And then the panda enclosures have to be cleaned a lot. So every day, so they'll have to take a little break in their house, and then when they're in there, we can feed them. So, but otherwise they go outside, and so it's just a very intimate experience. Now, as we're going through this, we're learning about pandas, and again, it's another separate 1-hour presentation or talk that I do on the trip on panda ecology in behavior and evolution. I cannot do all that right now. I'm already severely running out of time. I got so much, but just learning about pandas, which is the skull on the left versus the polar bear on the right. Polar bear is the most carnivorous of the bear and the most recently evolved. Now, the oldest living fossil of a bear is the panda, and it's the most herbivorous or plant eating. So you can pick out and see, and of course I could talk for 20 minutes. I'm not going to, but the different ways the dentition and everything has evolved for this special 99% bamboo diet. Being able to point out and watch things like having a pseudo thumb, which is an extension of the wrist bone that acts as a thumb so they can grip bamboo stalks, allowing them to eat enough bamboo to make a living. A low quality food for a bear. The next day we go see the Chengdu panda base, and now it's a bit more crowded, but this is the biggest base with the most pandas. They have 181. Last year alone, they have 12 new panda families born. So this is really the place where the most cubs are born. So it's a great place, again, to see pandas up close, to watch them. And we're there for the morning time. And then kind of the focus of this place is breeding. And it's really kind of started the breeding program. It started as the Chengdu Zoo in the 80s with a bunch of pandas they rescued from the wild that were starving, and then built that number up. And now today, there's still only about 350 to 400 pandas in captivity on Earth. So it's a special deal to see this many pandas. And then we learn about, and sometimes depending on the time of year and everything, looking inside the nurseries and the incubators where they are taking these tiny panda cubs and making sure that they are raised right, so you can build those numbers up. Lots of details and story to talk about, but anyway, that's all part of the panda conservation story that we kind of highlight on our morning visit. So yeah, lots of pandas are born here and raised here, and so a lot of the panda is a very difficult animal to breed in captivity, and it's a long story. I mean, all humans almost couldn't figure out how to do it, but these guys did. And so these guys are the breeding specialists of panda breeding on Earth. And of course, there's lots of cubs. Every year, new batch of cubs out, and getting to see them play around. Now, they have to split time up with their mother. So a mother can only have one cub at a time, and she in the wild will abandon one cub. So in the wild, it would just let one cub die because she cannot support two cubs just biologically. It's just unnatural. But in the breeding centers, they will take both cubs, basically switch them out with a mom, so they both have time with mom, and then the rest of the time they're with their all their other panda cub friends in the panda kindergarten, learning how to be pandas. So for pictures of panda cubs with the ginkgo trees in the background and things like that, eye contact up close, absolutely stunning. But it is a famous panda base, and it's a bit crowded, much more crowded than the place we went before. But still well worth it. You wouldn't want to go to Chengdu and not see this kind of the panda capital of the world base. So just lots of amazing panda interactions, and pictures usually don't do much justice to something like a panda cub. Might have to turn that down. So just a little bit of footage. What it's like to watch these. These guys are in October, so they've just come out for the first time. They were born maybe 3 months ago, and it's like their first week outside out of the incubators. Because in the wild, they would be kind of in like a tree log, a hollow log or something, or a den with their mom. Man, an hour goes fast. I gotta get moving. If you want to see videos like this, you can go to my either YouTube channel or my Instagram. I post it all, just search my name. Look at the little tiny guy. Incredible. I mean, how cute is that? I don't know. You can't really, it's impossible to get any cuter. So we're up there in the morning watching this with our folks. And from there on, there's some nice red pandas there as well that are in natural enclosures. Gorgeous thing. It's not related to the pandas. It's more related to raccoons. But we get to learn about them a lot and get to see them up close. Other birds of the Sichuan Basin, my favorite being the red-billed leothrix. So we're looking at natural history everywhere we can. And then we have a quick lunch and then hop on a bullet train and do something that we just started doing last spring because the bullet train just got developed. So we take what would have been a 10-hour bus ride, not comfortable, or an hour and a half flight plus the airport deal and everything like that. Instead, we go to the train station and we take a 150 mile an hour, 3 to 4 hour trip and just shoot right up to Xi'an. This is something we couldn't do before logistically. So the bullet train really opened things up when it opened last year. So Xi'an's a special city. We don't get to spend time in Xi'an itself other than the night because we've got a lot of ground to cover. But we do, of course, Xi'an being very special because of being at the beginning of the Silk Road. Again, you see, mixture of cultures like the Muslim influence from the Arab traders, and it's got that mystery. You start thinking about Silk Road history, and it adds this really amazing aspect of being in that one of the oldest cities in China in the world. And then we, of course, can't stop from seeing the terracotta warriors. We go earlier in the morning, so we beat the crowds and see the terracotta warriors. I know it's even on people that aren't so much into that are more into natural history, still on everybody's bucket list. This is something that comes from the first emperor in China, around 2,000 years ago, and he created this vast army of warriors in order to protect and to bury with him in order to protect him in his afterlife. So that's kind of the long story short about that. Well, we have a local historian expert that goes with us and just explains every single detail about one of the most amazing cultural relics on Earth without even, definitely could hold its own against anything. Then we have a quick lunch. We go to the train station and 40 minutes. Used to would have been a 4.5 hour bus ride. Now it's a 40-minute bullet train trip up to the Xinling Mountains to see my favorite primate on Earth. And yes, I guide in Borneo, where there's 7 species of primates, but nothing is as cool as the golden monkeys. This is a mountain monkey, the fuzzy, woolly guys, absolutely gorgeous, bizarre, cute as can be. And normally they're like ghosts, extremely endangered, living in these high alpine forests. But in this national park, they're out of the 1,800 in the park, there's about 90 that have become accustomed to getting some supplemental food on occasion, and they've lost their fear of people. So what that does is it allows us to go get an up-close look at something that I've only seen 2 or 3 times otherwise in the wild. Almost impossible to see in the wild otherwise because they're so shy, and then they're just in this high forest in this rugged terrain. These guys are still wild. They still go into the mountains and spend months at a time and do all their natural stuff. But when those rangers know how to get their attention and say, okay, we've got some natural food for you, and to help supplement their food for a limited habitat for them in this hard mountain environment, keep those numbers up and allow people to get sort of unlock some of the secrets, the beauty and the mystery, and be able to have these monkeys that, you can, sometimes they'll jump on your head to get from one tree to the other. Like there's absolutely no fear. You can get a foot away from these monkeys. If they want to, they get that close to you. And it is truly something that we added on last year. But honestly, when people see this experience of being up in this alpine forest and see these incredible monkeys that they never even heard of, it's one of the highlights of the trip. Absolutely. Just amazing animals, and still very, very much a secret. Now, people are starting to see pictures like mine on the internet and say, "Oh my God, I got to go see those." But still, normally we're the only ones there. So I don't know what it's going to be like in 5 years. China changes a lot, but right now it's amazing seeing these guys in the fall colors, and then all the interactions and the cute babies. If you want to learn more about these and get really hooked on these monkeys, you watch the film Born in China, which you can watch on Netflix for free. Here's a little bit of footage. And I'm sorry guys, I hope you guys stay on. I'm not gonna make my 1 hour time limit, as I never do. This trip is too complicated and too diverse for an hour. I could go into what I think the craziest social dynamics of the monkeys that I know, of the primates that I know about, because it's basically a whole bunch of harem groups, one male and four female, like wives, and then they basically share their offspring duties. But all these families travel together. So it's absolute chaos with jealousy and competition. Even though they're all going together as a kind of a big extended family group, they're constantly bickering and vocalizing and everything. So it's a trip, and we spend an afternoon and an evening there before we head down back into Sichuan province, because we were in Shanxi province before, and head into the mountains way off the beaten path and stop at a beautiful ancient village that was kind of on the road from the Silk Road down to Chengdu 2,000 years ago, and see sort of a restored very ancient city that's like I said, very much off the beaten path. And foreigners other than we don't go there, and get a real look at the culture and the history. Stop at some of the small farm towns, villages, and see what I think is some of the friendliest people in the world. Absolutely the friendliest people in the world, and just so excited that you've come to appreciate where they live. Normally China, panda habitat has been limited to the highest, most inaccessible regions of the mountains of China. And so I had always wanted to go in and get into wild panda habitat. So many years ago, I did that. My Philip and I went. We spent 3 weeks backpacking and looking for wild pandas, and we saw scat. We never saw panda, but the magic of being in wild panda habitat was amazing. But I could never take NatHab clients there because it was too remote, rugged, and there was no infrastructure or accommodations. But years ago, we'd heard about this new hotel that had been built with stimulus money from the earthquake, and in this remote nature reserve. I still kind of keep it a little bit secret now because I don't want it to get it's just too much of a secret now. But with a decent hotel in the middle of the Chinese wilderness that's full of wildlife. And this is something that has just been a golden nugget for us and for me in my life. It's my favorite place in the world. And there it is, wild panda habitat. And we've had a few wild panda sightings on NatHab trips. But I don't want to, it's not like going to Churchill or Katmai to do panda viewing in the wild. They're too elusive, and they're too shy, and it just doesn't really work like that. So, but you could be lucky, and you'll see their sign, you see where they live, and you have the thrill of searching for one and having that chance of maybe seeing a wild panda. And even seeing panda poop in the wild is, to me, an awesome wildlife experience. But you get back into these bamboo thickets and forests, and this is an amazing nature reserve because unlike other nature reserves in China, they didn't move all the people. They moved all the people out. So that may not have been good for them, although now they have alternative sources of income with some of the tourism. And this was only happened in 1978. But what it was old farmland that they turned wild, and it's becoming wild again. And because it's old agricultural land, it is incredibly rare, rich habitat that for some of these very rare species like the Sichuan takin or golden takin. We're right on the border of the subspecies Sichuan and golden. So we actually see two subspecies of takin, and they hybridize. So some of them are gorgeous golden color, but there is this big up to 800 or even 1,000 pound, like it's basically related to mountain goats, and they climb like mountain goats, but they're really big, stocky, burly, bison-like animals. And just to see these guys, especially when I'm sure 90% of you guys have never heard of this animal, or if you had, it's the one in Bhutan, which is very, very dark and smaller. These guys are spectacular. And there's a lot of takin. And of course, it's a forest environment, but it used to be we had to be pretty lucky to see them. But because this reserve is being managed the right way, they're losing their fair people, and the wildlife sightings every year are getting better and better and better. And I can show you pictures like this of one of the most rare, unknown, spectacular, majestic hoofed mammals on Earth all day long, because I've got hundreds of them from our trips, and we always do well. And these incredibly cool animal. Again, I have to just give you a little bit of a hint because I'm way running out of time. I just want to show you everything. I don't have time to talk about it all. You have to come on the trip and you'll hear more than you want to know about tack biology from me, Moira, or Eddie. This is a tack calf. So yeah, and most of this is where we travel on with small vehicles, but then we get out and we will do easy walks down these old roads or boardwalks or easy trails, pretty much. It's not difficult hiking, actually. And if there are a few hard hikes, but then we usually split the group up and half of us will do the hard one, half will do the easy, and sometimes, either one might see better stuff. So we have a lot of takin that are really doing well on this old agricultural environment that's gone totally wild and gone back to nature, such as the Reeves muttjock, which is another deer species, a very small one, about 2.5 feet tall. And this is another Reeves muttjock, or the tufted deer. And every year I go, the animals are less and less afraid of people. And so, although you cannot compare this to Botswana, where you're driving right up to these animals and they're everywhere, this is a forest mountain environment with some of the most endangered animals on Earth that you've never heard of, and you never dreamed of seeing in the wild. And me being in the wildlife photography field and stuff, I mean, I hear photographers or real diehard mammal lovers that are looking at my stuff on Instagram saying, "How do you get those? Are those really wild?" Yeah, they are. Where do you go? Well, it's hard to explain. We've found kind of an amazing jewel of Asian wildlife. I mean, you got to remember, this is Asian wildlife. This is not Africa. And some of these deer species, like these tufted deer, which are extremely elusive and shy and been hunted for thousands of years by people, and muttjock and the musk deer is another one. The cool thing about these guys is the males have these huge canine teeth. Can you believe that? And they use it to fight over females. So that really is a skull. And all those small deer species in Asia actually have that, these giant canines. Some of the Capernae family, such as the Chinese goral, which is like a mountain goat, they are very common there. We're checking them out on the cliff, although so camouflaged and hard to see. But we always have good ones. And then don't see this very often, but sometimes very, very elusive, shy, magnificent bovid called the sorrel. So no, these are not from a zoo. Like, these are, we're hiking through the forest along rivers and stuff and seeing these animals in the wild. Eurasian wild boar is North America. They're invasive and not really an animal that people like so much. But when you're in Eurasia, they're native to that area, and they're a rare, elusive animal that's pretty amazing to see. And for me to see these animals not so afraid of people in a place like China, that it really shows that this is the Yellowstone of China, a place where people can go and actually see these big animals. Now, like I said, you have to work hard for it. I always set expectations the right way, but if you're an animal lover like me and you know how special it is to see these creatures, it's a special experience, and you don't want to leave when we have to go. Tibetan macaque, which is macaques are like Asian baboons. This one is a mountain variety that lives in high elevation and very fuzzy. They're called the old man of the mountains, and they're actually common in the park and even around our hotel. And just to watch their dynamics and everything, and their behaviors, if you like primates, is very, very special. And they're super charismatic and entertaining. Like the females are the ones with a red face, and like this one is eating wild persimmons along a river boardwalk trail that we found in this gorgeous golden fall sunlight. Magic moments. So just like baboons, they have big teeth, and so they're not really aggressive to people, but they're not dangerous to people. But definitely cool critters. And the big males, these with scars all over their face for fighting for dominance and huge teeth. These old alpha males. And then to see primates on a mountain river, hopping along the rapids and the boulders of a river, is just a really unique experience. I really love it. There's also rhesus macaques that we see occasionally, other species of macaque, and occasionally golden monkeys, but you have to be very, very lucky. But it's okay because we've just had a huge golden monkey fix in the Shinling Mountains a couple days before. Now, here's the really amazing story: is that this is one of the rare. This bear is probably going to go extinct before the panda. The panda has like 1,800 pandas in the wild, but in a very, very small area. But this one has a giant range, half the size of the United States. There's only 15,000 left in the wild. This is a moon bear, or Asiatic black bear. And what I noticed is extremely good habitat for moon bears here. But moon bear must be very shy. It's been one of the most heavily persecuted animal from poaching by humans anywhere, because bears, because of their gallbladders and other aspects about them, actually are more heavily poached than any other animal in Asia especially. But here, the moon bear population is thriving, and I know that because I can see lots of these moon bear nests, look like bald eagle nests. And moon bears will go up in a tree that they're feeding on the nuts or the flowers, and they'll break the branches off. They'll actually build themselves a nest while they're using that tree. And so you can just drive through and you can see how many moon bears actually are there. Pretty amazing. But very, very, very difficult to see. I saw one in the spring, but this last fall, we had a total of 7 different wild bears sighted on our trips. And this one day we found a valley, and we sat with scopes and we watched a mom and 2 cubs feeding on a wild kiwi tree. Did you know that kiwis are actually native to Sichuan and they grow in the wild there? Going along the forest floor for walnuts, wild walnuts that were and then also interacting with 2 other bears that came through. And this is incredible, like stuff that if somebody told me that I was going to be saying this in a webinar 4, 5, 6, 10 years ago, I would have said nah, I wouldn't have believed them. So for a bear lover, this is unbelievable. I could talk about moon bears for an hour, but I got to pass through moon bears. How about this guy? I love musteleds also, the weasel family. Well, this is the coolest mustelid in the world. This is the yellow-throated martin. Probably seen 12 or 13 of those in the wild here. And it's like a really fast wolverine, but not quite as stocky, that actually hunts in a pack of 3 and can take down deer. Really cool, beautiful creature. Super fast. It's very difficult to photograph, and usually we see them for a little while, but as they're just running down a river. But I've gotten lucky a couple times and got some half decent pictures of just a spectacular, beautiful mustelid. This is a hog badger that we encountered on a hike last fall, and then we go out at night and just walk around the hotel, and we see things like this masked palm civet. This is a leopard cat. And this was just about 150 yards from our hotel, hunting at night. Not very good pictures because it's nighttime. And then you can see that cat right there in the middle, a leopard cat. You see, you're in the mountains, these gorgeous mountains that look like the Smoky Mountains, but you're seeing, moon bears. You have a chance of seeing pandas. You see all these other crazy deer species you never heard of. And then there's also cats. And then if you go during a warm period, some fantastic diversity of amphibians and reptiles, such as this red-spotted green viper and this Chinese mountain viper below, the red one. And bird life is prolific, such as the golden pheasant that we see in the wild. I don't know. Is there a more spectacular bird than that? And we do very, very well seeing these. They're hard to see, they're elusive, but we've got it down. We see our golden pheasants in the wild. And I've got 100 pictures like this of wild golden pheasant we encounter on a hike in the bamboo forests. A hoopoe, red-billed blue magpie, with a huge magpie with a long tail, and a bright red bill, magic bird. I love dippers. They're really cool. They have this special big dipper there called the brown dipper. And unlike our dippers, which dive to the bottom of the creek and eat insects, these guys actually go after fish. And there's proof of a parent coming up and feeding its 2 big chicks a fish. These brown dippers we're watching. The greenback tit, which is like a chickadee, but they're more beautiful. And then just even if you didn't see an animal, which we will, it's just fantastic. Beautiful rivers, waterfalls, bamboo forests with huge wild rhododendron trees, wild azaleas, and rivers full of very endangered fish, and clear, clean water. There's a rare commodity in Asia. And then if you're a lover of forests, unique forests, this is amazing. You got red birch alpine forest with a bamboo understory. This is a Chinese red birch in the wild up there. Chinese maples that are wild. And in the springtime, if you hit it right, it just depends on the year. But the red buds are just out of this world. In fact, this park is famous for red buds. Redbuds are beautiful. Again, I think there's 35 species of wild rhododendron in Sichuan. So, and again, this is a giant, these are redbud, bud, and then rhododendrons, different rhododendrons. Gorgeous, this is all wild. And I'm just flipping through them quick, but you can watch this again on YouTube. And then here's Corey, who found one of the 3rd rarest orchids in China while we were on a hike. He got so excited, I couldn't believe it. It was one of the highlights of our whole trip, was to see this botany expert of Sichuan, who was our assistant, get so excited to see this beautiful rare orchid. Just a couple more pictures of us just wandering along looking for wildlife, but hard to even look for wildlife when you got such scenery. And those are the spring flowers. Then the fall colors is just unbelievable. Like Vermont, better actually. Gorgeous, gorgeous fall colors. And above this beautiful forest and rivers and stuff, you have these incredible mountains. And then, as we go along and we're trying to appreciate the conservation, this is what we really do. It's like there's a guy in the middle here, Ma, and he started out in Tinjahu in the 90s as when poaching was very bad there in the park. And him, and actually mostly him, really got a reputation single-handedly taking down every poacher by himself, unarmed, with just using like guerrilla tactics, like to the point where poachers never go in the park anymore. Now they can't because their security is so strong, and they have remote cameras and sensors along the borders. It's basically impossible to get away with it. And in China, if they catch you poaching in the park, like a moon bear, you're going to face severe penalties. But Ma is not necessarily now the Rambo anti-poaching ranger as he used to be. Now we basically, he's our assistant. Well, he's our local ranger guide that takes us to where the animals are, and he knows more about natural history in that area than anybody. He knows everything. And there's a language barrier, but we've got our assistants there, and he's got a passion for wildlife, and he loves us coming and seeing how excited we get at seeing a takin or yellow-throated martin. And really, it's this contagious passion that encourages the conservation. And that is why when we're going there to show our appreciation of him protecting these animals, and then the park is getting rewarded by it, it's setting a precedent that doesn't exist in China. This is not Botswana, where everybody already knows that if there's a bunch of beautiful animals there, the people are going to pay the money to the lodge and come. China is not like that. So this program is pioneering that conservation aspect and building connections and relationships and fostering the passion and the efforts. So that, to me, that's probably the top reason why I love this trip so much. I cannot wait to go back. And Ma is just such a special guy and just a total wildlife lover. So all of China is not do the things that we're not happy about with the ivory trade and all that kind of stuff. It's not all of China. There's some amazing conservation heroes in China that deserve appreciation. And then the last leg of our trip, we hop on a bus and we drive all the way from up in this area where we were, all the way over into this side of the basin to see some of the most spectacular scenery in the world. But we do a stop at Wolong Panda Base, which is very, very famous in the panda conservation story. It's with George Schaller. It's the first panda base that was set up. There was some breeding there, but this is really where the research went on to save the pandas from extinction. And if you do more research, Wolong is very famous, but it was destroyed in the 2008 earthquake. And it was inaccessible because the road that they had rebuilt was along a landslide, so it was very dangerous. But they built tunnels. So this last year, we began going to Wolong, and it's fantastic because it's up in the mountains. You see the fall colors, it's beautiful. And there's a panda kindergarten there, and usually we're the only ones there. So it's like a panda lover's fantasy. And this is a very special woman, I have to say. Donna Silverman was on my very first trip to China in 2008, me and Philip together. Didn't have much to do about wildlife at all, except we went to a couple panda bases. But she loved the trip, loved China. And then last fall, she came back again to see what Philip and I had actually, and Nadhab and everybody had done with the trip. And it blew her mind. She got to see Wolong, which she couldn't see because it was destroyed in 2008, but she'd always wanted to see it. And she got to see Wolong. She got to see all these wild animals. And it was just a really, really cool experience for Donna Silverman and for us to show her what we've done with China since she'd last seen us. And Wolong is where I got some of my best pictures of panda cubs in the spring or the fall. I mean, look at that with the fall colors in the back. This was last fall. So yeah, Wolong is a fantastic place. And then we drive for another 3 hours. We're stopping in between. I'm not going through the whole itinerary step by step because I couldn't. But then we go up to what the Lonely Planet says is the best kept secret in Sichuan, which I already told you I think is the best kept secret in the world. Sichuan is this gorgeous national park called Four Sisters Mountain. It's at 10,000 feet, but we take it real easy. And it's mostly like nice, easy walks through scenery that just blew my mind. And I've seen scenery in the world, just unbelievable. And I'll just let the pictures do the talking. And there's an incredible geology story here too, but I'm already getting over my time limit here. But this is like a skeleton forest. And what happens in this extremely tectonic region is you have a mountain river, but you have a lot of earthquakes, which cause a big landslide, and it backs the river up, and then it forms these gorgeous lakes. So every valley in this area will be like a chain of beautiful lakes with some of the remnants of this forest that got flooded out. And then we can get a taste of Tibetan culture, which is like you've flown to a different planet from China. It's a totally different culture, different people, food, music, feel, everything. These are true, extremely tough, cold weather adapted, high altitude mountain people, and Buddhists. So you have the beautiful stupas with the colors and that feeling of kind of that Buddhist peace set against this amazingly rugged terrain. Which, I mean, the mountain scenery is just unbelievable. So like up at the top, this is the Four Sisters Mountain. And this one is 20,500 feet. Okay, so that's the same elevation as Denali. So it's known as the Four Sisters Mountain because it's got four peaks. Like it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this is the fourth one, the tallest, which is the youngest sister, and the tallest because young mountains are taller. And it's known as the Queen of the Mountain of Sichuan. And the tallest mountain in Sichuan is Ganga. I love that name. We're not going to see it on the trip, but it's 24,000. It's almost 25,000. It's known as the king of Sichuan Mountain. So for a mountain lover, you're gonna be blown away. And if you've always kind of wanted to experience that feeling of Tibetan culture, if you've seen 7 Years in Tibet or something like that, and you get that feeling. And there's a special feeling of being in the Tibetan region, looking at those mountains. And the pictures. The first time I went there, that just blew my mind. And it very, very very, very, very few tourists there. There's maybe 50 or 100, depends on the week you go or whatever. But it really is. So this is another thing. I don't know what it's going to be like in 10 years, but this is another thing to wander these pathways, look up, and you don't even feel like you're really on Earth, like you're in a dream, because the mountains are so incredible. Even if you're jaded and you've spent time in the Rockies, or like me, and tons of time in Alaska, still, and I've been there a number of times, it's still, when I go there in a few weeks, I'm going to be like, I still can't get over these mountains. Incredible. I think that's the end. It's not too bad. Is everybody still there? I hope I've still got internet.
We are. We're still here. Yes, fabulous. Thank you so much, Brad. It was a great webinar. Lots of questions here. I just want to address, several people were asking about the replay. So I just want to confirm that we will send the replay out by email. Hope to get that out by tomorrow. But jumping into questions here, Brad, there's a question about the level of activity on a daily basis. How many steps are you walking? How fit do you need to be?
Well, it really depends on what you're used to. So I'm gonna say this: like if you go to Churchill or you go on a safari in Africa, you're not even allowed to walk anywhere. It's not even a choice. In China, you have to walk. Now we're not going to be climbing any tough mountains, although we do, like in Tanjahu, we will try to split it up. So we have a more active group, We will go and we will do it, and then we will describe the trip. But we have enough staff people we can split. But there are times where we don't. You have to have a minimum amount. Need to be able to walk. I'm going to say to be safe, you need to be able to walk a couple of miles along easy terrain. But there's certain things about China that like the panda bases. I mean, it's not set up like we're just driving around. You have to walk up these trails or cement paths and up and down some steps. Not overly difficult, but yeah, steps. If you can't, you need to be able to be comfortable with steps because there's lots of steps in China. So I think you don't need to be in super good physical shape, but you have to be able to walk. So we're always walking slow with a group, but yeah. So mobility is definitely an issue. So I hope that kind of describes it. So
Yeah, I think it does. Thank you. By far, our most popular question today is about the best time of year to see pandas. So there was that general question about best time of year to see pandas, and then cubs. Would you say in the spring or the fall would be better for cubs?
well, remember we're seeing the cubs in the breeding center sanctuaries, and so they're always going to be there, and so it's not really a time that's better. So let's see. In October, the cubs that were born in August and September hopefully have just been released into their sanctuary. So in the fall you can see the youngest cubs but still outside, as opposed to if you went in August and September, which we don't go then, but if you did, those really young cubs would actually be in the incubators. So like the picture of the little tiny pink one. Well, we're not going to see that because that's in August, September, but we'll see the tiny ones first learning how to walk and climb its first tree. And then in the springtime is going to be the ones that just learned how to walk and climb its first tree in October. Well, they will have grown up to April. So they grow slowly. They're bigger. They can climb better, and they're probably more active. So, but
okay.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so the spring and the fall are both good times. The times you don't want to go is in the summertime. Like if you were going to go to Chengdu to see the pandas in like July, that's the worst time to go because it's 90 degrees in Sichuan Basin and the pandas hate hot weather. So but we don't go during those times.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. So you have a fan club. You have some fans listening in. Dennis and Celia, who went with you on your Katmai trip, are here and wanted to say hi. So we're excited about that. And we also have a listener who is going to be taking our first trip this year with us, who is going on a polar bear trip. So we love those connections. And you also have Bonnie here who says hi. So you've got quite the following, Brad.
Oh, Bonnie Rankin?
Yep.
I love Bonnie. Yeah.
Bonnie's and Lynn famous. And Phil as well. So, yep.
Lynn and Phil. Yeah, Lynn and Phil. Yep. They're in Northern Lights.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I think they're going to hopefully show up. Yeah, Bonnie's very famous. You can watch the WWF film we did in Churchill, and she's the one that when she saw her polar bear, she started crying, and now and then she came up for Aurora, and she saw Aurora, and she started crying then too.
Aw. Oh my gosh, so you've got Huib and Johan also here this is like old home week, Brad.
Yep.
Hey guys, so lots of people who love you are here listening today, and so I think they all need to go with you to China.
Yep, and but remember, if it's not me and it's Moira or Eddie, we're actually training some other new guides. Everybody, we've got a new guide that I'm super excited about. He lives in Chengdu, but he's from California. But he moved to Sichuan to learn more about ecology. He's fluent in Mandarin, travels all around, and he's a perfect fit for us. And anyway, so we're just building our team, and so every trip that we're doing now is a huge success. The last fall, we all had like a little celebration, just because we had the best feedback ever in history in China, and then I'd say in like 10 years ago or whatever, it was a place that people wanted to see, but they liked certain things about it, and there were certain things that bothered them. But we've just honed it down to where it's a perfect for NatHab clients. And if you want to see China, but you're also kind of a NatHab traveler and you like how we travel and you like nature and stuff, like we've got it down to a science now. And it's right at the cusp of kind of where somebody like me is saying it's my favorite trip to guide. And I'm sure that there's going to be other, it's the time to go, in my opinion. Just see it now. Mm-hmm. And hopefully it'll just keep getting better in the future. But China changes very quickly. And I don't know. But right now it's absolute paradise, and I'm just excited as hell to go.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I'm going to collect up the rest of these questions, and we'll make sure that they get answered. But I think at this point, I'll turn it back over to you, Brad, for closing comments.
Okay. And I don't have anywhere to go if you want to keep asking me questions, but I don't really have anything else to say. Just other than repeating myself, I think I pretty much this trip is really cool in a lot of ways. And I think China's changing so fast and becoming such an influential part of the world that I think that every American, every Canadian, every British, Australian, everybody should go see China to understand it more. And if we had a better understanding of China, an appreciation of it, we would understand its problems and its successes, and it would just be a better, easier world in general for every issue. But China is a very successful. They are becoming powerful, and if you understand China, you appreciate it, and it's a great thing to go see what really a culture that's coming into its golden age.
Well, Brad, thank you so much for being with us, and everyone, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate it very much, and we will promise to get that replay out to all of you as quickly as we can. So with that, we'll say good day and conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.